say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hail at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave. Ladies and gentlemen, feds and degenerates, cuckolds of all ages, it's time for Mild's Culture Plate. I am your host, Mild Kevin Miles, and it is Friday, July 4th, 2023. Oh, pardon my microphone. I had to adjust it there. Get the other microphone out of my face. It is July 4th, 2025. Excuse me. 2025, July 4th, 11:23 p.m. Central. So it is technically still July 4th. I know a lot of you are East Coasters, Eastern time zone folks. So yeah, I missed July 4th for y'all. Right here on Mild's Culture Plate, what I like to do every year is I do a reading of the Declaration of Independence. Happy birthday to the United States of America. Cheers, cheers. Happy birthday to the United States of America. Hey, we got Craig Allen over on the East Coast. Cheers and welcome, Craig Allen. Good seeing you. I need to go ahead and turn all the stuff on. Sorry, I bolted right into the national anthem. That was kind of impromptu. I wasn't even planning on singing that, but I figured, my normal theme song is my old band, and it didn't seem quite appropriate for a sort of protest song to start off the July 4th stream. So instead of doing my normal intro, I decided to sing the Star Spangled Banner. All right. Well, folks, so what I usually do every year is I'll do at some point, usually it's earlier in the evening, but this year was pretty special to my family. So we had to, definitely do some celebrating together as a family. And so we'll go ahead and get into the reading of the Declaration of Independence. Let me go ahead and bring up some text. Go ahead and bring up the text. I know New York Times puts it out every year. I prefer to go to like the National Archives. Or wait, no, I don't. That's text is tiny. One of these years, I'm going to have the whole text memorized. Here we go. Let's do this. This is ushistory.org. Let's do this one. I think it's important every year that we know the reason for the season. It's kind of like those Christians who want to bring Christ back to Christmas. I want to bring the reason for the season back to Independence Day. In fact, I hate how many people in the liberty movement call the 4th of July the 4th of July instead of calling it Independence Day. It bugs me in a sort of autistic way. I'm not mad at you for doing it. I know why you do it. I mean, it's definitely a definitely a colloquial thing, and I don't have a problem with that. Cheers and welcome to Showban over on YouTube's the YouTubes. Cheers and welcome. Cheers and welcome. I didn't bring a drink. I should go get a beer. I should go get a beer. You know what? I'm going to go get a beer, folks. It wouldn't be the 4th of July without a beer, right? But I need to hurry up because I want to have this thing read by midnight central. Be right back. Well, shit. Well, shit. Craig Allen took the kids to the park. Hell yeah. I just realized the only beer I have is Irish beer, and that didn't seem prudent. So instead, I opted for a hard Mountain Dew. So we'll get through this, folks. Nothing more American than Mountain Dew, yeah? No? Wouldn't be an American on the internet without Mountain Dew. All right. So yeah, the reason for the season is very important, folks. So let's get into the reason for the season. In Congress, July 4th, 1776, the unanimous declaration of the 13 United States of America. When in the whores. I am so sorry to the founding fathers for that mistake. When in the course of human events it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and nature's God entitle them, a decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to the separation. So, folks, pretty cut and dry preamble to the Declaration of Independence here. You know, if you're gonna revolt, you're gonna divide a people, because that's what you're doing. You know, they talk about civil war. This was civil war. It was Revolutionary War, but it was a civil war. There were a lot of Americans who had no beef with the British rule. They were like, you know, let's just keep the king content. Let's give him what he needs and just try to keep his thumb off of us a little bit. And then you had the founding fathers that were like, his thumb's always going to be on us. We have to throw it off. And if we're going to do so, it's important. It's important we communicate to ourselves and to our brethren the reasons why God demand this of us. Okay, so let's continue. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. So yeah, your rights come from God, the Creator. Even if you don't believe in God, you as a human being were born with an intelligence and an inherent ability to live, be free, and to guide yourself in a direction toward happiness. And in order to keep your neighbors and your friends and in order to keep corporations, in order to keep the maximum ability for you to have liberty and for you to guide yourself toward happiness, you have to make sure that other people aren't able to stomp on you. So in order to do that, we formed a government. Men naturally gather as governments that derive their powers from the consent of the governed. Whenever any form of government becomes destructive to these ends, meaning our rights, it is the right of the people to alter or abolish it, and to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. Pretty self-explanatory. Prudence indeed will dictate that governments long established should not be changed for light and transient causes. Well, we see a lot of that now. We shouldn't be changing government for change's sake. Shaban says, so weird in school, I think they skip the first paragraph. Yeah, they tend to. And accordingly, all experience has shown that mankind are more disposed to suffer while evils are sufferable than to right themselves by abolishing the forms to which they are accustomed. The devil you know. That's exactly what they're talking about here. The devil you know. It's easier to appease the devil you know than to throw it off for the unknown. But when a long train of abuses and usurpations pursuing invariably the same object evinces a design to reduce them under absolute despotism, it is their right, it is their duty to throw off such government and to provide new guards for their future security. I've been seeing all these posts about Diddy. I hate to bring up Diddy during this, but all these posts about Diddy and how are women supposed to feel safe if Diddy's not in prison? And part of the issue is those women, unfortunately, were willing to suffer the evils than to right themselves by abolishing the evil forms they were accustomed to. Hey, cheers and welcome to Darth Hideous. Yeah, sorry, I probably shouldn't be. Don't get wasted in rooms with Diddy. Yeah. So here we go. Yeah, so you got to throw it off. You got to throw off your tyrants. Unfortunately, Cassie and Jane went back to Diddy, and it made it harder to protect them. So what is their right and their duty? Okay, so such has been the patient sufferances of these colonies, and such is now the necessity which constrains them to alter their former systems of government. The history of the present King of Great Britain is a history of repeated injuries and usurpations, all having in direct object the establishment of an absolute tyranny over these states. To prove this, let facts be submitted to a candid world. So this is the intent of the Declaration of Independence. It's to remind people that they had the power, and it's to remind the people exactly the list of crimes against humanity, not necessarily crimes against the crown. Cheers and welcome, hiker emoji. Sorry, I saw you there, and I don't know what I was thinking. So cheers and welcome. Good seeing you, and good seeing you, Darth Hideous. So the following, the rest of the Declaration of Independence is this list of essentially crimes against the colonies, the reasons why the colonies had to overthrow the crown because of the actions of the King of England. Now, I think it's very important Darth Atheist says it's a holiday. We aren't going to accuse you of thinking or assume you're doing any. Nah, yeah, I'm not. I have already had an alcoholic beverage. I've watched some fireworks, and I've had some fun time with my lady. And I don't mean, yeah, what, think of that whatever you will. I'm not gonna anyway. Here we go. Let's go. He has refused his assent to laws the most wholesome and necessary for the public good. Dirty rebel traitor scum. Yes, of course. So this is like if we were to try to pass a law today to make child rape illegal, and the governor's just like, yeah, I ain't gonna sign that shit. That's kind of what the King of England was doing that then. You know, our governors of the colonies would try to pass laws, and the King of England would just be like, yeah, no, that's not going to be a law. He has forbidden his governors to pass laws of immediate and pressing importance unless suspended in their operation till his assent should be obtained, and when so suspended, he has utterly neglected to attend to them. So yeah, even when they would pass laws, they're like, yeah, no, that's not a law. He's refused to pass other laws for the accommodation of large districts of people, unless those people would relinquish the right of representation in the legislature, a right inestimable to them and formidable to tyrants only. So compare this to some of the arguments the left wing makes about Washington, D.C. needing, more representation. Although I would argue that's the opposite. This is more like Hawaii, telling Hawaii it can't have a representative in Congress. And if you do, then, well, if we give you representation in Congress, well, then you can't make your own laws. You can't make state laws if we give you representation in Congress. That's kind of what the King of England was doing to the colonies back then. Yes, we need way less Washington, D.C. I fully agree. He has called together legislative bodies at places unusual, uncomfortable, and distant from the depository of their public records for the sole purpose of fatiguing them into compliance with his measures. Yeah, imagine if the president were to pull the heads of the Republican Party into back rooms with cigars and tell them, I need you to pass one big beautiful bill. I don't care how you do it, but if you don't do it, you're getting primaried. Sorry. And no, I don't mean to necessarily make direct comparisons between Trump and the King of England, but King George, I should say. But it is important to think about these things in context of 2025 America. Because in my lifetime, 90% of these things have happened with the U.S. government, whether it be other presidents. Oh, hey, thank you, Hiker Emoji, for the repost. Cheers. He has dissolved representative houses repeatedly for opposing with manly firmness his invasions on the rights of people. Again, imagine if Obama had just declared the Missouri State Senate a terrorist organization and they had to disband or some shit like that. He has refused for a long time after such dissolutions to cause others to be elected. So then telling Missouri you can't elect a new Senate, whereby the legislative powers incapable of annihilation have returned to the people at large for their exercise, the state remaining in the meantime exposed to all the dangers of invasion from without and convulsions within. So yeah, Missouri, not only are you not allowed to have a Senate, well, we got all these immigrants coming up from Mexico, and they're just going to chill in St. Louis for a bit. And yeah, we're not going to help out with that. He has endeavored to prevent the population of these states for the purpose of obstructing laws of naturalization for foreigners and refusing to pass others to encourage their migrations hither and raising the conditions of new appropriations of lands. So yeah, now that's like, okay, yeah, you started to settle in Missouri, but we're not going to allow you to keep going because we don't want you to be able to naturalize and bring in other foreigners there and grow your population to a size that would be dangerous to Washington, D.C. or the British Crown in this case. He's obstructed the administration of justice by refusing assent to laws for establishing judiciary powers. Yeah, you can't have courts. You can't have courts in the colonies. Made judges dependent on his will alone for the tenure of their office and the amount and payment of their salaries. So yeah, if you want to be a judge, go right ahead, but I can remove you at any time, and yeah, you might not get paid. Good luck electing a judge. Erected a multitude of new offices and sent hither swarms of officers to harass our people and eat out their substance. Yeah, that's like expanding the IRS to 85,000 agents and sending them after conservatives. He has kept among us in times of peace standing armies without the consent of our legislatures. Now, this is where my MAGA and other conservative friends might part with me a little bit. I'm in support of some of the actions ICE is taking, but we're not supposed to necessarily have armed federal forces acting on our lands that are, what do you call it, independent of Congress's direction. But 2025 is a different time than 1776. I would say that for the most part, we should have the same philosophies because, what do you call it? Political science never changes. Just the players of the times do. But right now, yeah, we've been invaded for so long, we had to do something. And our Congress wasn't going to do it. So, well, I guess our Congress finally did do it under the one big beautiful bill. So it is what it is. There's more than one way to skin a cat, so to speak. He's affected to render the military independent of and superior to the civil power. I think that's pretty self-explanatory. You have it's like if we were to take our military and send them back to Guam and say, yeah, Guam, you're a U.S. territory, but whatever government you have, well, they're going to be replaced by the generals of our military. He is combined with others to subject to a jurisdiction foreign to our Constitution and unacknowledged by our laws, giving his assent to their acts of pretended legislation. So yeah, this would be kind of like us saying, yeah, Guam, now you have to do what France says, or what we don't skin cats around here. Well, I don't run a Mexican or a Chinese restaurant, but it is what it is. But yeah, that'd be us, handing Guam over to Canada and be like, yeah, you just got to do what they say. Quartering large bodies of armed troops among us. Yeah. Yeah, if the redcoats came knocking on your door, you had to provide them with shelter and food. For protecting them by a mock trial from punishment for any murders which they should commit on inhabitants of these states. Okay, wait a minute. Let me go back real quick to the quartering of troops here. You remember there was a news story last year during the election that the vice president was having sort of a town hall event, and like her campaign staff like took over someone's business. And while that's not necessarily quartering large bodies of armed troops, it's literally the government seizing private property for a federal. It's hard to explain, but yeah, for government fuckers to do it with what they want. So yeah, this shit's still happening. Protecting them by a mock trial from punishment for any of these murders which they should commit on inhabitants of these states. Yeah, well, kind of like we never get justice for things like the January 6th stuff. We never get justice for things like the Epstein stuff. We just got mock punishments. Cutting off our trade with all parts of the world. Well, yeah, when you're a territory, the dictator gets to do that. Imposing taxes on us without our consent. Well, there's the big one right there now, isn't it? Taxation without representation, folks. I'm sure you folks know about that. Depriving us in many cases of the benefit of trial by jury. Yep, kind of like all the January 6th defendants who were just not charged for several months, just thrown in a holding cell and not completely charged. Transporting us beyond seas to be tried for pretended offenses. Well, some would say the Gitmo stuff during the global war on terror, where the president could just point his finger and say, that's a terrorist, and hey, we'll just swallow you up, take you to Gitmo. Or we'll have Barack Obama just fly a drone over your house and push a button. For abolishing the free system of English laws in a neighboring province, establishing therein an arbitrary government, and enlarging its boundaries so as to render it once an example and fit instrument for introducing the same absolute rule into these colonies. So yeah, it's like, okay, we're going to take over your neighbor and we're going to screw them so hard that you can't help but pay attention and realize that you are next. Man, there's still a buzz in my microphone. Sorry, I know that's got to be annoying as hell to listen to, but let me mute my mic here. Did it go away? I think it went away. All right. Taking away our charters, abolishing our most valuable laws, and altering fundamentally the forms of our governments. Yep. Basically just waving a magic wand saying, yeah, shit's got to be different. Suspending our own legislatures and declaring themselves invested with power to legislate for us in all cases whatsoever. Yeah, you get no say in your government. Only the governor does. Abdicated government here by declaring us out of his protection and waging war against us. So yeah, you need police, you need protection from pedophiles, protection from violent migrants, or, in this case, savage natives. Yeah, that's not our problem. You guys worry about that. Meanwhile, give us your money. Oh, and by the way, if you say no, we're gonna help the savages rape your stuff. Plundered our seas, ravaged our coasts, burnt our towns, and destroyed the lives of our people. Well, yeah. Yeah, if your neighborhood, your little village isn't supporting the King of England enough, we'll just burn it down. He is at this time transporting large armies of foreign mercenaries to complete the works of death, desolation, and tyranny, already begun with the circumstances of cruelty and perfidy, scarcely paralleled in the most barbarous ages and totally unworthy of a head of a civilized nation. CPB One app, folks. The CPB One app. Let's take our immigration laws and just ignore them and create an app where, yay, as long as the illegal migrants tell us who they are on this app, they can just walk right across our border with all the backpacks and phones and, military age men. Just come on over. Constrained our fellow citizens taken captive on the high seas to bear arms against their country, to become the executioners of their friends and brethren, or fall themselves by their hands. So yeah, basically, our FBI and military being turned against United States citizens. Or we'll snatch you up and give you the option to become part of the military. He has excited domestic insurrections among us and endeavored to bring on the inhabitants of our frontiers, the merciless Indian savages whose known rule of warfare is an undistinguished destruction of all ages, sexes, and conditions. In other words, if you piss off the Native Americans, or the British government gave them a reason to be pissed off at the Americans, then yeah, when the natives were pissed off enough, they wouldn't follow the English laws of warfare, right? They would. You remember the old European warfare where people would march in lines? Yeah. Native Americans didn't know anything about that shit. They would just come into your fucking village and start whacking off heads. And every stage of these and again, that's nothing against the Native Americans. It's just that this idea of civilized war that Europe had going on at the time was definitely not a reality. It's not the laws of nature. The laws of nature is when you want to destroy something, you just go in and you just destroy it. War has no rules, ultimately. Civilized men try to institute guidelines, but ultimately war has no rules. If you want to destroy something, you just destroy it. In every stage of these oppressions, we have petitioned for redress in the most humble terms. Our repeated petitions have been answered only by repeated injury, and a prince whose character is thus marked by every act which may define a tyrant is unfit to be the ruler of a free people. So yeah, we've begged for help. We've told you what you're doing wrong. We've asked you to treat us better. Instead, you send your son, the prince, to rule over us with an iron fist. And a free people cannot let that be. Nor have we been wanting in attentions to our British brethren. Yeah, we feel a brotherhood with the British, but not its government. We have warned them from time to time of attempts by their legislature to extend an unwarrantable jurisdiction over us. We have reminded them of circumstances of our immigration and settlement here. We have appealed to their native justice and magnanimity, and we have conjured them by the ties of our common kindred to disavow these usurpations, which would inevitably interrupt our connections and our correspondence. So yeah, hey y'all, your government's fucked up. You have the power to keep your government in check. They're using your army to stomp on our necks. We can't stop it. Please help us. But they too have been deaf to the voice of justice and consanguinity. We must therefore acquiesce in the necessity which denounces our separation, and hold them as we hold the rest of mankind, enemies in war, but in peace friends. We therefore, okay, so those are all the problems we had with the King of England and the nation of England and the way it treated the 13 colonies of the United States of America. That was enough tyranny. All of the stuff we just read was enough tyranny. Understand, they didn't have an NSA spying on their entire populace. Now, they did have the redcoats beating in people's doors and rifling through their belongings. But we have the digital version of the same thing on these smart devices we carry around in our pockets every day because we have the NSA just gathering entire networks of traffic all at once. Cell phone traffic. So all the tyrannies we see today, it's the same old stuff. But because we identify with some of our politicians, we tend to like some of our rulers, we don't get angry enough. And I'm not saying start a revolution. I'm not saying start a civil war. I'm not saying do some commie color revolution. I'm saying demand your politicians follow the Constitution. And have them sign something like this. We, therefore, the representatives of the United States of America, in General Congress, assembled appealing to the Supreme Judge of the world, God, for the rectitude of our intentions, do in the name and authority of the good people of these colonies, solemnly publish and declare that these colonies are, and of right ought to be, free and independent states. That they are absolved from all allegiance to the British Crown, and that all political connection between them and the state of Great Britain is and ought to be totally dissolved, and that as free and independent states, they have the full power to levy war, conclude peace, contract alliances, establish commerce, and do all other acts and things which independent states may of right do. Think about that, folks. Imagine the fucking conniption fit our mainstream media, CNN, our left wing would have if Texas just decided, like, hey, we want to be allied with Russia. We want to establish commerce with, I don't know, Iceland. Just like, we don't care what Washington, D.C. says. We don't care what Congress says. We don't care what your laws are. We're just going to do that because we are a free and independent state with the full power to levy war, conclude peace, contract alliances, and commerce. Darth Hideous. We used to be a proper country. Used to tar and feather politicians when they got out of line. Coincidence? Nah. For the support of this declaration, with a firm reliance on the protection of divine providence, we mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. These men were signing their death warrant. I'm sure you've all heard that before. This was traitor. This was being a traitor. And what's the punishment for being a traitor? You get the rope. Your family may get the rope too. And all your money, it's going to go into the coffers of the government because we can't have war criminals passing down their money to their, the people who they brainwashed. Should I read the names? I'll read the names. Josiah Bartlett, William Whipple, and Matthew Thornton of New Hampshire. John Hancock, Samuel Adams, John Adams, Robert Payne, Elbridge Gerry of Massachusetts, Stephen Hopkins, William Ellery of Rhode Island, Roger Sherman, Samuel Huntington, William Williams. What a name. William Williams. Fuck yeah. Oliver Wolcott, all of Connecticut. William Floyd, Philip Livingston, Francis Lewis, and Lewis Morris of New York. Richard Stockton, John Witherspoon, Francis Hopkinson, John Hart, and Abraham Clark, of New Jersey. Robert Morris, Benjamin Rush, Ben Franklin, John Morton, George Clymer, James Smith, George Taylor, James Wilson, and George Ross of Pennsylvania. Cesar Rodney, George Reed, and Thomas McKean of Delaware. Samuel Chase, William Paca, Thomas Stone, Charles Kerr of Carrollton of Maryland. George Wythe, Richard Henry Lee, Thomas Jefferson. Benjamin Harrison, Thomas Nelson Jr., Francis Lightfoot Lee, Carter Braxton of Virginia. William Hooper, Joseph Hughes, John Penn of North Carolina. Edward Rutledge, Thomas Hayward Jr., Thomas Lynch Jr., and Arthur Middleton of South Carolina. And then finally, Burton Gwinnett, Lyman Hall, and George Walton of Georgia. Darth Hideous said, I'm hoping tar and feathers is among them. I'm sure some of those gentlemen were eventually tarred and feathered. I'm sure they were. So, folks, let's do this. I know Shaban was over on YouTube earlier, but I think I'm going to go Rumble exclusive, and let's make this a party. What do you say we don't listen to a little bit of patriotic music and have a chit chat? Because I'm not doing a culture plate show. This isn't a culture plate show. This is my yearly reading of the Declaration of Independence, understanding the reason for the season, understanding that in God's year 2025, things have gotten way worse, and that, we're at a point where I don't know if we can trust our government any more than the colonists could. Yeah, let's get rid of YouTube and get some music going on. So sorry, Shaban. Sorry, anyone else who may be stopping by the YouTube. We're going to move this party over to Rumble and probably hang out for another 30 to 45 minutes and listen to some tunes, listen to some patriotic music, and we'll have a little fun time celebrating the 249th birthday of the United States of America. All right.